What if this year you didn't write a single resolution? No list, no January 1st promise, no gym membership bought in a moment of champagne-fueled optimism? What would actually happen to you? Most people assume the answer is obvious. Without a resolution, you'd drift. You'd stay exactly the same, maybe get a little worse because nothing was pushing you to change. That's the quiet belief sitting underneath almost every resolution ever written, that the promise itself is what creates the progress. But here's the strange part. The data doesn't agree with that belief, not even a little. Every January, tens of millions of people make a resolution. By the second week of February, most of them have already broken it. Researcher John Norcross at the University of Scranton has spent decades studying exactly this pattern, tracking resolution makers against people who wanted the same changes but never formalized them into a resolution at all. His research found something that should unsettle anyone who's ever felt guilty for quitting in week 3. The dropout curve is brutal, and it's not random. Is structural. Sit with that for a second. Structural, not a willpower failure, not a character flaw, a predictable pattern baked into the format itself. So, if resolutions were actually working the way we assume they work, that curve wouldn't exist. You'd see a slow, steady decline as life got in the way. Instead, you see a cliff, a specific sudden collapse at a specific predictable time. That's not what motivation loss looks like. That's what a broken mechanism looks like, which raises the real question. If the promise itself isn't what drives the change, what is? Psychologist Peter Gollwitzer spent years studying something he called implementation intentions, a fancy term for a simple idea, a plan that specifies exactly when, where, and how a behavior will happen, rather than just declaring that it will happen. His research compared vague intenders against specific planners, and the gap between them wasn't small. It was the difference between people who mostly followed through and people who mostly didn't. Read those two group descriptions again. I will exercise more versus I will walk for 20 minutes at 7 a.m. before I open my laptop. Same goal. Wildly different outcome. The resolution was never the variable that mattered. And here's the gut punch part. Every January 1st, you're not failing at willpower. You're using a format that was never built to hold the thing you're asking it to hold. Picture the moment. You're standing in your kitchen on New Year's Eve, phone glowing in your hand thumb, hovering over the Notes app, and you type, "Get healthier," in block letters like it's a spell that will cast itself into reality on its own. That's the moment the whole thing was already quietly doomed. Not because you lack discipline, because a vague, undated, unlocated intention has almost nothing behind it except hope. There's a third piece of evidence that makes this even harder to dismiss. Stanford researcher B.J. Fogg, who runs the Behavior Design Lab, has spent his career studying how habits actually form. And his conclusion cuts against almost everything the resolution industry sells you. Motivation is unreliable. It spikes and crashes. What actually determines whether a behavior sticks is how small, specific, and frictionless it is to perform, not how inspired you felt when you decided to start it. Which means the version of you standing in that kitchen on December 31st high on champagne and hope is precisely the least reliable version of you to be making commitments on behalf of the version of you that has to show up on a gray Tuesday in February with no motivation left at all. Feel that for a second. You're not writing a promise to yourself. You're writing a check that a completely different emotional state has to cash. So here's the assumption you've probably been carrying without ever saying it out loud, that the resolution is the engine, that without the declaration, without the new year, new me moment, nothing would move at all. That structure has to come from a single symbolic act of commitment, or it doesn't come at all. That assumption is wrong, not partially wrong, backwards. The declaration was never the engine. It was the exhaust, a visible puff of intention with almost none of the actual mechanism behind it. The real engine, according to every researcher who has actually studied behavior change instead of just marketing it, is specificity, timing, and friction. None of which require January 1st. None of which require a resolution at all. So, what would happen if you never set another one? Probably at first nothing would feel different. No dramatic before and after. No countdown clock. Just an ordinary Tuesday in whatever month you decided something mattered enough to change. But something else would likely happen too. You'd stop carrying the specific private shame of the broken resolution. Psychologist Kelly McGonigal's research on willpower and self-criticism has shown something counterintuitive. People who beat themselves up after a lapse are more likely to abandon the goal entirely, not less, because the shame itself becomes exhausting to carry alongside the goal. Every February, millions of people aren't just failing at a habit. They're absorbing a small, repeated hit to how capable they believe themselves to be. Removing the resolution doesn't remove the desire to change. It removes the yearly ritual of setting yourself up to fail on a date chosen by a calendar instead of a plan. Think about what that actually mirrors in your life right now. How many things are you currently planning to start eventually that live only as a vague hope in your head with no time, no place, no trigger attached to them? A book you'll read someday, a habit you'll build someday, a conversation you'll finally have someday. Someday is not a plan. Someday is a resolution with the date sanded off. The twist isn't that goals don't matter. It's that the version of goal setting you were taught, the New Year's version, the dramatic declaration version, was optimized for the feeling of commitment, not the mechanics of actually following through. Two very different things wearing the same costume. So imagine the version of you that never makes another resolution again. Not because that version gave up on changing, because that version learned to stop outsourcing the hard part to a date on the calendar and started attaching every intention to a specific time, a specific place, and a specific trigger instead. That version of you isn't less disciplined. That version of you just stopped asking a symbolic act to do a mechanical job. So, one more time, what if you never set another New Year's resolution? Nothing dramatic happens on January 1st. And for the first time, that might actually be the whole point.